Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. Just want to take a few seconds and hop on before you listen to the podcast and tell you a little bit about what we're covering today. Chuck Bentley, who's the CEO of Crown Financial Ministries, or crown.org, is where you want to go check out the information on him and the incredible ministry that they provide at Crown. Is on the program today to talk about everything from helping your elderly parents out to biblical investing. He is the smartest guy that I know when it comes to stewardship and the teachings and how he's really blessed so many people. We're lucky to have him come on the program once a month, and he'll be on today to talk a little bit with you. And I want to make sure that you do know about the webinar that we're doing this Thursday, Reaching Your Retirement Goals in a Complicated and Changing World. I think you'll agree it has gotten very complicated. We talk about that and talk a little bit about going back to the basics to really figure out if you are on track, where you are in your retirement goals, but really make it understandable. And that's the whole goal, is for you to leave with something that you can really use and quite frankly use for the rest of your life, as far as how to track and keep up with whether you are on your retirement goals. So that's Thursday. You can sign up at prudentmoney.com. It's at 12 noon. Go make sure that you have signed up for that. And if I can ever do anything for you at all, please make sure that you reach out to me at info@prudentmoney.com, and we'll get you taken care of. This is Bob Brooks. Enjoy the program.
This is Bible School Radio, KDKR, Decatur, Dallas, Fort Worth, KYJC, Commerce, and KMWC, Bethany. On the web at kdkr.org and on all your devices with the Live 365 app. Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, ways to biblically invest. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, today, Chuck Bentley, CEO of Crown Financial Ministries, is here to discuss the answers to stewardship-based questions that he receives at crown.org. Chuck, it seems like it has been a very long time since I've had the blessing of speaking with you.
Well, Happy New Year to you, Bob. I agree. I think the last time we were on the air together, we were talking about whether President Trump would get elected or not. And I'm telling you, the world has changed since then.
Just a little bit, just a tad. So talk a little bit about what's going on with Crown this year, because I know that y'all have set new objectives that you feel God is leading you to accomplish, and just really celebrate y'all's ministry and what you're doing over there. I would love to know what, and the listeners hear what's going on for 2025.
Well, thank you so much. We are almost 50 years old now, founded by the late Larry Burkett, who started teaching God's financial principles. Really was the pioneer of a comprehensive look at what God was saying about money. We offset the prosperity teachers, and we offset the people who promote poverty, and teach a message of biblical stewardship, meaning take responsibility, whether you have a lot or a little, to be faithful to God. And I would tell you, we're probably growing faster and reaching more people right now than in our entire history.
Wow.
God is just opening doors you wouldn't believe, Bob. I could talk about that this whole program, but the good news is there's a hunger for, I think, returning to God's ways. People want something that it's a sure foundation. You know, the world economy is shaky. There's tremendous fear and uncertainty in the world. But in Christ and in His ways, we can rest and we can find true peace. And I think that's one of the reasons we're growing.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that everybody knows about Crown, first of all, and second, the ministry that you have there can also be a huge help with people who are facing financial difficulties. And so I want to make sure that everybody who listens knows that, hey, if I have some things I need to work through, I can talk to Crown about it.
Well, thank you for that. The truth is we've got a very robust, compassionate coaching ministry. People can get assigned to a trained coach that helps them to get on a budget and pay down debt and to work through their financial challenges. I do 2 daily radio programs. We have tons of materials, 135 different products that help people with their financial pain, and we appreciate the exposure, Bob. I'm very grateful for that.
Well, before we get started, I wanted to address something that I'm seeing right now, and it's financial fear. There's a great deal of change, as you and I was just thinking about the last time we talked, and you talked about everything that's happened. There's a lot has changed. And so, I see people kind of on a range of emotions from euphoria down to a lot of fear. Chuck, from a stewardship standpoint, how can people keep from being fearful? And I think, when you talk about the people who are happy and elated, just to kind of get a balanced emotional mindset.
Well, I think that's a great question, Bob, because the answer lies in what Scripture teaches us. I try to remember that we do live in a scary situation. There's danger and risk all around us. If you're a realist like I try to be, there's hot spots all over the world, whether it's war or nuclear proliferation or an economic meltdown. There are people that just really struggle with seeing what is happening around us. But fear is recognized. Courage that God gives us is recognizing the risk and finding peace and confidence in Him. I have to remind ourselves every day, this is not our home.
Right.
There's something beyond this life, and I always say that to give yourself the most peace, you really need 3 financial plans. One, how to make it to the end of the month. That's probably about half of America.
Yes.
And it really is, Bob. There are people making $100,000 a year trying to make it to the end of the month. Inflation has really hurt.
Yeah.
And they're frightened, and they're buying eggs, and it's going up, and they can't buy a house right now, or all of those things are real. The second financial plan is, how do I make it to the end of my life without running out of money? And because of the uncertainty in the world, and there's so many moving parts, people are fearful about that. I think that's the reason the price of gold continues to go up.
Yes.
I mean, gold is just a fear index. If fear is rising, so is gold. And so that's obviously a concern for many people. But the third financial plan is, how do I get prepared to stand before the Lord? And because we're all going to need that plan, and if you have that plan in place, then your first 2 plans, the end of the month and the end of your life, they get much clearer. And I think it brings you peace. I think it helps you to recognize this is not all there is. I may have setbacks, I may have challenges, I may have losses, but God's going to redeem all things for my good beyond this life, and my treasures aren't here, they're in heaven. At least that's how I live in peace, knowing full well that it's a pretty scary place.
Very, very well said. One of the things I wanted to talk about today with you is because you get real questions that come in, from on the website at crown.org, and people struggling and trying to make decisions, and what a great ministry outlet to have available to people to go to crown.org. And where can they find that? I meant to look before I got on the air. Well,
if you go to Ask Chuck at crown.org, you can see my daily, or I actually write a weekly column, and I answer these questions that come in on Christian Post, as well as on what we call Ask Chuck at crown.org.
Okay, so let's start with the first one. I am a recent widow. I have been advised to move my investments out of foreign stocks due to possible economic turmoil under our new administration. My advisor is not a Christian. What biblical principles can guide me? What do you think about that, Chuck?
Well, you're the pro. As I think about that, you've got to be going, are you kidding me? Is that all that this advisor told this widow? I really felt I felt empathy for her, because there's so much more that goes into a decision like that. And I think this person was reacting to the idea of putting America first, bringing manufacturing back in the United States. And he was just having this knee-jerk reaction. Well, it must mean that all foreign stocks are going to go in the tank, or going to suffer. And I took the opportunity to give her a biblical perspective, because we do get a lot of widows that look to us for advice. And I think a lot of times maybe the spouse said, look to Crown, they'll give you advice, or, they'll shoot straight with you. And so I tried to do that. And the first was that she should only invest in things that she understands. That's a biblical principle that, Solomon told us to know the condition of our flocks. That's one of the Proverbs, that if you understand what you're investing in, you're much more likely to be successful. And, if it's the Uber driver telling you to buy crypto, that's not a good plan.
Right. Yeah.
So
go ahead. Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, so you want to know what you're talking about, even when you're talking to your advisor. And I think the advisor should provide a careful analysis of all the stocks, funds, or individual companies that maybe she's currently invested in, to see if there's some that she might want to keep before she just makes a blanket move.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that just jump out at me when talking about widows. That's very close to my heart. And just to see them doing this alone. And it's so very, very important to have that person that's kind of managing the process between her and the financial advisor, and making sure that she's getting good advice. Because let's face it, it's not always advice that's given out is that good. Well,
no doubt about it. Not all wealth advisors are created equal, are they, Bob? And we've seen true malpractice in that area. And in this particular case, I'm often not able to follow up, because I just get these questions sent in, and
sure.
Sometimes they're anonymous, and so I have to try to figure out the context. But the second biblical principle is to diversify, and that means don't narrow your concentration to the point that you're more vulnerable than if you would just stay diversified. And I believe the principle of diversification is to hedge the fact that nobody knows the future.
Yes.
Nobody can tell us what's to come. And historic performance of a stock doesn't necessarily indicate future performance. And so we have to have a certain level of humility to say, I may have the best singular stock or portfolio balance that I could possibly have, but if it's too concentrated, I'm more vulnerable than if it's diversified. And so to just take some giant category off the table, that bothered me a little bit in what she was being told.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Chuck Bentley, CEO of Crown.org, Crown Financial Ministries, is here with me today to talk a little bit about stewardship. I always call him the smartest guy in the room when it comes to this, and has a lot of great wisdom to share with us. If you want more information about Chuck, just go to Crown.org, where you'll find a lot of resources, a lot of great resources, and you can check that out. Hey, we're up against a break. We'll be right back with you. Stick around. We'll be right back.
They say you should never talk about money or politics. This week on A New Beginning, Pastor Greg Laurie brings us a message called Money and Politics. He's in a series discussing hot-button issues and tackles these two subjects head-on. Tune in for a biblical perspective this week on A New Beginning.
A New Beginning, weekday mornings at 7:30.
This is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. Well, it is complicated. On the one hand, you know what you would like to do in retirement. On the other hand, you can't imagine that it even be possible. Then you add everything from the ramifications of artificial intelligence to cyber currency to the increased risk of investing. It just seems complicated. Well, I find that two roadblocks stand in the way of you in retirement. First, you need to accept that it doesn't have to be complicated. It's really just easy math. Second, you need to understand 4 simple keys to unlock your retirement goals. In other words, you need to start back at the basics. Once you do that, it will start to make sense, even if you're not good at math. You'll still get it. On February 20th, we'll teach you these 4 keys in webinar format. We will start at 12 noon and spend 30 minutes together learning the 4 keys. If you want to be able to answer the question, am I on track for retirement? This is something you don't want to miss. Sign up today at prudentmoney.com and we will look forward to seeing you there.
Dr. Charles Stanley.
It is absolutely impossible that God would ever do anything in your life and my life that is not good. He may allow all kinds of troubles and trials, but you know what? Because He is an absolute sovereign God that He is by nature a good God.
The teaching of Dr. Charles Stanley on In Touch, helping you grow in Christ every day.
In Touch, weekdays at 12:30.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. I'm talking to Chuck Bentley, CEO of Crown Financial Ministries. Hey, Chuck, just out of curiosity, what were your thoughts about the advisor not being a Christian? Did you have any feedback for that?
I can't remember in the article if I referenced that or not, but I believe that it's always better to be like-minded with those that you're getting advice from. Light and darkness don't have much in common, Bob. And we do far better when we have a shared set of values, and certainly Christian values are, in my view, the greatest values in the world that should guide our investments, it should guide our thinking, it should guide every part of our life. And so I'm always very pro finding a Christian investor. Now, I don't want to recommend an investor or a wealth manager. I said investor or wealth manager simply because they're a Christian, but I like to see a combination of a like-minded worldview and professional competence.
Let's talk about another question. I want to help my elderly parents who live on a fixed income. I don't want them to get penalized with taxable income. Can you advise me? You know, I love how you start this out, the answer to this question, using the gifting rules. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, in 2025, we can give any member of our family, or actually even a stranger, up to $19,000 without a tax penalty. And if you're married, you can double that. So it's tremendous opportunity to help someone else without being concerned about taxes. You can also pay their medical bills directly and avoid taxes that way as well. So there's a lot of latitude to help someone without worrying about taxes. So we just came right at that to try to give them some comfort on what they're trying to do for their elderly parents.
You know, it's interesting. I don't, believe it or not, I don't see a lot of this. So how many adult children financially actually take care of their parents? I mean, what do the surveys say?
Oh, my goodness. You know, we just did a complete program on that because we had actually received a question similar to that. It's staggering, Bob. I think that something like 40% of people aged 24 and older help their parents enough to claim them as on their income tax. It's like 40% today. And I just had no idea. I tend to think of it in the reverse, that the elderly are taking care of the adult children. But it's actually today, the adult children are taking care of their elderly parents more and more. And it's probably indicative of the aging of the baby boomers, the boomers who are aging out. Maybe they can't afford senior care, and they're being taken care of, in many cases, living with their children. But it's happening a lot.
Well, I like what you talk about, marriage, because, I have seen this as far as a husband and wife not agreeing on that, that they help the husband's parents, and a lot of it is, well, I don't want their problems to become my problems. I don't want us to run out of money because they're running out of money, and it can be a very, very touchy situation. I mean, how do you approach that situation if your spouse is not for it?
Well, I have a friend that always says if you're trying to make an impactful financial decision and you make it in support with your spouse, in other words, you make it jointly, and then if the decision goes bad or the investment goes bad, you've only lost once. But if you make it without their support, you've lost twice.
Right. Right.
And the second loss is worse because you may never live that down. But I do think it's really, really important to discuss it and to be honest about your concerns and fears. There's an emotional drain for people that get into helping their elderly parents, long-term care, long-term financial drain, or even relational stress comes into play. And so it's always good to be on the same page and to just be sure you're united before you go forward.
One of the tough issues for adult children is to actually talk about finances with their parents. I mean, how do you go about that conversation, especially if they don't want to discuss these matters? They want to keep everything private.
Well, that's very common. I have that in my own family situation. I think my father will turn 92.
Wow,
Here
92.
92 and still lucid and bright and capable. And he doesn't want to have the conversation, And so I can see where families run into that problem. And one thing is to start early on building trust and being transparent and just being willing to have a conversation and talk about things that will let your parent know that you're willing to stand in as a faithful steward, as a trustee, as a power of attorney, whatever it may be, and to do things early on where they'll feel like, okay, it's okay if I tell them where I really am. A lot of times they're embarrassed because they feel like they, maybe are going to disappoint their children. Maybe there's not a lot to inherit, or there's a lot to inherit and they don't want them to know. There's just a variety of reasons. But try to build trust as early as you can.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm talking to Chuck Bentley. He's the CEO of Crown.org and Crown Financial Ministries. If you want more information, great website, crown.org. You can go check it out. One of the real concerns, I think, is the fact that the elderly get caught up in a lot of these identity theft scams. And one of the things we talk a lot about, I'm sure you guys do too over there, is that it's so very important to make sure you've got some kind of financial boundaries or something set in place that protects your parents from safeguards them from identity theft.
Oh, not only that, these romance scams too, Bob. Did you read about the one last week?
No.
A French lady going through a divorce was approached online. Hi, how you doing? Turns out she thought she was deceived through artificial intelligence with photos, videos, and recordings that she was being proposed to by Brad Pitt.
Oh my
and
gosh.
She believed it. And she sent him $1 million because he needed it in his divorce with Angelina Jolie. I mean, it was the craziest tale you've ever heard, and she believed it and got scammed. And so it's not just identity theft. Seniors are vulnerable in so many ways that every time I get an article like that, I'll send it to my dad and say, okay, Dad, you want to talk about any of this? Let's be careful with what's going on out there. And, a lot of times he's not real savvy with technology, and I could see how easy it would be to deceive him if somebody even pretended to be a trusted friend using identity theft or artificial intelligence. So, yes, we need to help them be aware.
What does the Bible say about taking care of your parents?
Well, I think that the implication that we're to honor our parents take care of our own, take care of our family, is that we should be their first support system. And I think that obviously the Scripture says the parents are to leave an inheritance for their children, and so it sort of works both ways. The Bible is saying we're to love and honor each other, because the more cohesive and strong a nuclear family unit is, really you're preparing, you're giving back to society by taking care of your own. That's one less person that has to be dependent on government. It's one less person that has to be alone and taken care of in some other way. And I think it's not only a responsibility but also a joy. We have asked any of our family members, if they ever want to move in with us, we're going to make room. And I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to think that way and to be prepared to take care of them.
Well, Chuck, Happy New Year to you. It's great to have you back and talk to you for half an hour, and just wish you all of God's blessings.
Well, keep up the good work, Bob. I'm excited about what you're doing and the programs you're running and the good work that Prudent Money does for your clients.
We'll talk to you next month. Take care. God bless. Bye. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. What a blessing to have Chuck on once a month and to share his wisdom on stewardship. He literally is, he just knows more about that than anybody that I know. And we get so blessed to the information he brings to the program. Hey, I want to make sure that you know about the webinar that we are doing on Thursday. It's 12 noon. And there's if you go on to prudentmoney.com, there's a link that you can sign up to be on to join the webinar, and it's called Reaching Your Retirement Goals in a Complicated and Changing World. And we're talking about something that's so very important, because the statistics and surveys show that people are not even remotely ready for retirement. We talk about the two roadblocks that kind of get in the way of this ever happening, and talk a little bit about it's just basic math. It really is just basic math, and the easiest way to go about doing this. But I take you step by step through the process, and hopefully, the hope is that you walk away with some great information that you can use and apply to your own financial situation, so you can finally answer that question: am I on track or not for retirement? So go to prudentmoney.com, sign up, and I'll see you at 12 to 12:30 this Thursday. Well, hello, this is Bob Brooks. You got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.